All right, welcome to your line and shape assignment. What you're going to end up doing is creating drawings in marker that are inspired or based on or abstracted from black and white images that you either take yourself or collect off of the internet. You want to search for images that have nice opportunities for line and shape. Really what we're working on with this project is we're working on your compositional skills. So figuring out how can you abstract or reduce what you see into compositions that are uniquely yours. So you're looking for shapes, you're looking for different lines, for different values, and you're really playing around with how you can tweak an image but still maintain its basic essence. So you are ready to complete your first assignment, which is your line and shape drawings in marker. You're going to head down to the line and shape module. You're already there if you're watching this video. Please make sure that you've already looked at the overview and the materials list. There's some really good information in there that's going to help you with your project. So on the page for this assignment, you will see that it has all of the particulars, all of the requirements. So you're going to be making 12 thumbnails. You're going to create 3 from those thumbnails. You'll pick the strongest 3 and you'll create 3 polished drawings in marker. You will have source images that you either take yourself or you get off of the internet. Those are the images that you're abstracting, right? That's what we call a source photo. And then you'll end up creating digital composites of your drawings and your photos. You'll save them as JPEGs, and that's what you'll submit to Camino. So take a look at all of this and make sure that you're comfortable with everything. The first thing that you'll need to do is get some good image sources for your abstractions, your line and shape drawings. So I'm just going to go to Google and I'm going to type in, well, here's what people do that they probably don't want to do: line and shape. And then hit images. And here are a lot of beautiful drawings involving line and shape. They're great, but this is not going to serve you. It's also doing the work for you in that all of these drawings are already abstractions. You want to create your own abstractions. So what I recommend doing is think about things that maybe have line and shape. So let's try railroad tracks. Beautiful. Lots of opportunities for line and shape. Look at that. Really nice stuff here. So in order to kind of clarify my search, I might go to Tools and go to Size and then select Large so that I know I have images that aren't pixelated. It's not imperative that you do this. You can totally do it from color, but sometimes switching it to black and white, since you're going to be doing black and white drawings, makes it a little bit more, direct of a transition. And then let's say you're going to find something. So again, we're staying away from this kind of thing. So another thing you can do in your search is you can say type and make sure that it's just photo, not a line drawing or clip art or anything like that. So let's say I have a photo that I really like. Let's do something like, this one. Okay, so you're going to save this to your computer somehow. You can drag and drop it onto your desktop. You can hit Control and then click and then Save Image As, and then you pick where you're going to save it. You'll get a better image if you actually visit the site, but since I don't have a Pinterest account, I know that if I do that, I'm not going to be able to access the photo. So just this thumbnail for what we need today is fine. So you're going to go through and you're going to find a bunch of different images. Anything can be line and shape, really. Like, let me think about leaves. So it doesn't have to be man-made. And then I'm going to do I have to do the same thing? No. That's pretty interesting. I could see making some magic happen with that. So I'm going to go ahead and save that guy. Let's see, what else would be line and shape? Architecture can be really good. Yeah, look at that. Lots of line and shape, right? Ooh, that's kind of cool. So maybe I'll do that. Pick more than you need. There's no reason not to. So take a look online at the handout and see how many you need to have. And then, I don't know, I'd probably double that in terms of the number of things that I looked for. Let's try, gosh, I bet even water would be pretty good. Yeah, I mean, you could even make like little droplets work. That's kind of cool for line. I could see that working. I don't know, I don't love anything. I'm not going to save that, but then that makes me think, ooh, ice crystals. That could be pretty good. Yeah, look at that. That's some fun stuff. Ooh. Okay, so get creative. And really, you know, exhaust your search. So I would go through a few of these pages. Don't necessarily just go for like, you know, the first ones that come up. Push yourself a little bit. All right, so that's the first step. You want a bunch of photos in black and white that have nice opportunity for line and shape exploration. All right, hi everybody. So we are going to talk about doing thumbnails. We've been looking at the ideas of abstraction and the ideas of line and shape, and now you guys are going to do your first assignment, your first real assignment where you're actually making a work of art. For this, you're going to need basic white paper. It can be in a sketchbook or it can just be printer paper, whatever works for you. And you'll need a pencil of some kind. I like to use usually a harder pencil, like a 5H or a 2H, something that's going to be pretty light, but it's not, you know, it's not imperative. But generally when we use pencils, we're just kind of making a plan. So the lighter the pencil it is, or the harder it is, the easier it's going to be for you to erase. So what you're going to need to start with, other than that, you've got your pencils. You'll also need a couple of Sharpies. I like to use like a very fine, ultra fine point, or like a razor point, and then a more traditional fine point. If you have a chisel tip, that's great. For your thumbnails, you probably won't need it because we're going to be working with really small surfaces. So you have already printed out your black and white photos, or maybe you haven't printed them out. Maybe you're just going to look at them on your computer or your phone. That's fine too. But you've printed out your images that you feel like are good examples of line and shape. Black and white makes it easier for you to kind of think about things in terms of black and white, but you can also do color as well. So here's one that I'm going to use, railroad tracks. I feel like there are lots of opportunities for different kinds of lines and shapes in there. It's pretty clear. There's pretty good contrast, right? So I can make out these shapes fairly easily. You don't have to print it this big. That's just how I printed it out. It really doesn't matter for this step how large the image is. Okay, so let's talk about how we're going to go about doing thumbnails. Let me grab my ruler. I'm going to preemptively apologize for things like awkward ums and then also how the camera is going to zoom in and out and try to focus. So just bear with me with the technology here. So thumbnails are down and dirty little sketches, and they're a way for artists to figure out how they want to make a composition. So remember, a composition is just the way that you set things up on a picture plane. So what we want to do is we want to draw multiple little picture planes that are going to give us an idea of how we're going to compose this piece. So eventually your drawings are going to be 3 by 5 inches, 3 by 5 inches. But if I were to do a thumbnail sketch of 3 by 5, that's pretty big. So I like to do really small thumbnails So I'm going to use like a 1/2 inch as a 1 and go 1, 2, 3. And then I might, since I'm going to do a bunch of these, I might do multiples while I'm here. Okay, and then I'm going to come in the other direction and try to be square, getting a nice right angle. If you had a T-square, that would make it that much easier. But remember, these are just kind of rough preparation sketches, so don't worry if they're not perfect. It's totally fine. So then I'm going 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that I've got a 3 by 5 inch rectangle. And that is referencing my picture plane. So the reason you want your ratio to be the same in your thumbnails as in your final piece is that that picture plane and the way that shapes and lines interact with it really change depending on you know, the kind of surface that you're talking about, whether it's a square or a really long rectangle. So if you were to do, let's say, square thumbnails, it would give you a completely inaccurate idea of what your final composition would actually look like. All right, so there are 3 little picture planes for my thumbnails. Now these can be vertical, they can be horizontal, they can be a combination because you don't necessarily know at this point whether you're going to go vertically with something or horizontally with something. So because my image right now is a horizontal orientation, just for the sake of ease in terms of demonstrating this, I'm going to rotate my pad this way. So now we are talking about horizontals. Okay. So here's my image. What I'm going to start doing is finding major lines and shapes that I feel like talk about what's happening in the photo. Abstraction is reducing things down to their bare bones kind of ultimate essence, right? If you go too far with an abstraction, then it's like it doesn't look like the thing at all. We don't have any kind of reference point for it. But we also don't want to just copy something because that's not really composing, that's just copying. So I'm going to take this and see what I can find, lines that I can work off of. And let's see, how can I fit this all on camera? I don't know that I can. So I'm going to start with maybe just these kind of diagonal lines that come in. And I could use a ruler for sure. It's not a bad idea. But I'm just being really loose here. And I'm not even necessarily worrying about all the spaces between each line being accurate to the image. So that already is an abstraction of this, right? You can already see, I think, pretty easily how these two things relate, but this is clearly more abstracted. So let's see, I'm going to keep going with this. Maybe I'm going to play with this sort of shape here. So I'll come up here, see what I think about that. All right, it's a decent start. It's, you know, maybe not that exciting, but it's something to start with. And now maybe I'm going to talk about the verticals that I see on the bridge. Now I can think about, do I want to do this on both of them? Certainly on the picture, they're on both sides. But would it be more interesting? Would it be more dynamic if I just did one side? Potentially. Definitely this starts to feel not very balanced because we have all these verticals only here, but not over here. But let's say I wanted to have some verticals on this side, but I didn't necessarily want to perfectly mirror this. Well, I can take some liberties here, and maybe I could try doing some verticals there. So now I'm still referencing those verticals on the bridge, but I'm having a little bit more fun, a little bit more creativity expressing where they actually go. So at this point, let's say I'm happy with that. It's very simple. I don't know that I would end up doing this one, but again, you're not overthinking it. You're just kind of responding to what you see.
So it's really important as a creative person that you don't judge your work too early. You just have to make it and make a lot of it, and then you can step back and say, okay, is it working? Is it not working? What could I do to make it more interesting? So now let's say I'm going to play around with these kind of arches that I see here. So now I could take this triangle again. I'm just playing around, but maybe I'm not going to show the point of the triangle, and maybe I'll actually come off center. So you don't have to feel like you have to line it up exactly the way it is in the photograph. So now I'm gonna see what I can do with these guys here that could be interesting. So let's see, maybe I'm gonna just take an arc that way, and then maybe I'll take another arc. And I don't know, maybe what happens if I come outside of it just for fun. Could be interesting. And then I want to get bigger as it kind of comes towards me. All right, that's a start. Maybe I could play around with offsetting these somehow. So what do I think of that? I don't know, it could be cool. Maybe I could play around with some of the X's that I see. I tend to like, I tend to like things that are a little bit more pared down and simplistic. So I'm betting that I'm not gonna like this. Yeah, so I don't really know that this adds anything to it. It kind of becomes almost like decorative and sort of a distraction, I feel like, from other things that are happening with kind of these major directional lines. So things like that will happen. You're trying a bunch of things and you're gonna like some of them and you're not gonna like some of them. You're gonna wanna do as many thumbnails as you can. I know that there are a prescribed number in the assignment, I guess, handout or page that you'll find on Camino, but that doesn't mean that you should limit yourself to those. So you're going to do as many as you need to do until you feel like you have something that you are excited about and that you can work with. So what I'm starting to do now is I'm thinking about what's going to go black and what's going to go white, because eventually these compositions, your strongest ones, you're going to use a marker for them. So you're not going to be able to get like a whole range of values. You can definitely use things like hatching, and space in between your lines, and then space not in between your lines, to make different kinds of values. But it's going to be different from, let's say, doing a really full render drawing. But you should start thinking about how you're going to go, in terms of your values, what's going to go light and what's going to go dark. Okay, so I would do this step where I'm darkening things up for all of them, for all of my different thumbnails. And even in this stage, you might find that you need to do multiple thumbnails, because your first idea of what is going to go dark and what's going to go light, maybe in doing the thumbnails, you're going to totally change your mind about that. So you want to really explore. So this is it's like a science lab in a way. You really are investigating. Don't think about this being a fully rendered or fully polished drawing. You're just playing around. So I keep saying playing around, but this idea of play at this stage is really, really important. If you get too hung up on things having to be perfect, it kind of closes you off, and then you feel very restricted and limited. So you're just going to go nuts on it. Don't judge it. So let's see, then maybe I'm going to take these guys. Maybe something interesting can happen there. So let's take some diagonals. Remember, you can draw through, meaning like even drawing lines that you don't necessarily want, because you're going to be able to erase. So especially in this stage where you're using a pencil, it's going to be really easy to get rid of. So again, no worries about things being perfect. So let's see, where I didn't think the X's worked very well on this one, I think they probably will work pretty decently here, and I'll have to erase some things, and I think this is going to read better if I have maybe this be really thick. Same with the X's, so I might come in and do 2 lines instead of 1. Give that a shot. And then I'm going to color this in right away. Just visually, I feel like it's going to be a little bit clearer for me to see. You're welcome to do this in marker too. I just like to do my thumbnails typically in graphite pencil. I don't have to worry about making a mistake, because there are no mistakes in this stage, at least this stage anyway. All right, so let's see, what else could I do? Maybe I'm gonna take this and make it solid but a lighter value, and I know that if I just leave space between my hatching lines that value is going to be lighter. And now let's see, maybe I'm going to go totally dark here. Color that in. And let's see, maybe I'll just do some lines going this way. All right, so all of these, at this point, they're really, really simple. They definitely all relate to different aspects of this image. Now, would you necessarily look at this and say that is clearly a bridge, you know, on a railroad track? No, probably not. Does it reference this? Absolutely. So you have to kind of decide how far you want to go with the abstraction. This might be too far for you. You might feel like, well, wait a minute, now I don't even know what it is. And so that's something for you to really think about. There's no right or wrong answer to that. I could maybe try to do something with this guy to reference the tracks a little bit more. Maybe if I flipped it around and then did, you know, some horizontals that get smaller and smaller as it reaches that little point. I could see that working pretty well. But keep in mind, you don't want things to be so busy that it just becomes kind of a jumbled mess. So you want there to be a kind of hierarchy where certain things are important, certain things less important. You want to look for things like rhythm. How do these different shapes or lines or values repeat? You want it to feel pretty balanced. Not that it has to be symmetrical, but you want it to feel like things are relatively evenly weighted, that every aspect of the composition has been considered. So once you have your favorite thumbnail for each image, I recommend doing one that is the actual size that you're going to do for your finished piece, but kind of exploring more of this stuff, like what's going to go dark, what's going to go light, what kind of supplemental or kind of complementary little shapes or lines could I do that this size doesn't really afford me the opportunity to kind of explore. So let's say I like, I don't know, which one do I like? Let's do, I'm going to do this one and see what comes of it. If I was really being, you know, trying to abstract the image and still leave a lot of clues, I'd probably go with this one, you know, and I might even start to play around with the arches there, right? I could see, you know, pushing this a little bit further, but I'm gonna go with this one. So what you're going to do, what I recommend you doing, is you're going to draw then a full-size picture plane. So 5 inches is your long direction, and 3 inches is your short guy. And then again, mostly square, hopefully square. And here we go. So just because you drew this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to, stick with that, be married to it. You can actually make changes. So don't feel too tied in. I'm going to switch to using my ruler for some of this stuff rather than just freehand. Because I know that when I do my real one, my quote-unquote real one, I'm going to want it to be pretty tight, pretty clean. Whoops. And come this way. Change the angles a little bit if you want. Kind of change that. That's okay though. I can always tweak it. Whoop. There we go. All right, so that's pretty close to what I had. And let's make this thicker. Sometimes what will happen when you're doing a larger one is you might see different things as you go that you think are actually better than what you initially planned. And that's great. You should completely honor that. Never, never, never feel like you need to, again, stick with what you had initially planned. Because as I'm looking at this, I'm like, do I like this better than with all the X's? I think I might. I don't know. So maybe I'm gonna hold off on drawing the other line of that X. So let's do these little lines. So if you've never taken a design or a drawing class before, any kind of art class, a lot of this sort of practice or research or preparation, whatever you want to call it, sometimes, at the beginning can kind of feel like, I have to spend so much time and then I haven't even done my actual real project yet. And that's legit. That's sort of part of the creative process. So the more that you can embrace that, the more fun you'll have. And keep in mind too, even if you end up doing a lot of work for something that you totally change your mind about, all of that experience, that builds muscle memory. So that as you go, chances are, things get a little bit, I don't want to say easier, but the preparation feels, more mindful. All right, that's looking pretty cool, I think. So we've got line, line, line. I'm looking for balance. I might think about, these are closer together and then they get far apart. So maybe I'll draw some more that are closer together down here for a little added balance. And I might have to erase these if these are not perfectly placed, which they are not. Okay, what else? What else? This feels, pretty open. Feels like it wants something there. So let's see, maybe I'll do some verticals. just kind of randomly spacing them. Again, I can completely erase them. All right, let's start with that. I'm kind of satisfied with that. At this point, I'm going to go for it with my marker, but you could totally just do this in graphite too if you feel like you're not ready. So I might start, if I know that something's going to go totally dark, I'll probably use my regular Sharpie as opposed to my razor point or ultra fine point. And there's a couple of different ways you can keep your marker really clean. One is to use a ruler. So marker's a little freaky in that you can't erase it, right? Another thing you can do is you can use your ultra fine point for lining, which I think is probably a good idea. And again, use your ruler if you're a little sketchy about drawing straight lines. If you haven't used marker a lot, you know, what'll happen, even if you have used marker a lot, what'll happen is you'll be drawing and you'll kind of press down, and then you'll move your pen, and you'll have areas maybe that they kind of bleed like that. Don't worry too much about that. That's kind of just a practice thing, and it also has to do with the sort of paper that you have. So some papers do that more frequently, causes the pen to do that more frequently than others. And keep in mind too, on your border or your edge, you know, you're going to be either physically cutting these out or virtually cutting them out. See what I did? I just made a mistake. I wasn't supposed to draw into that part, but I did. So let's see. Let's see what happens. Probably going to be okay. Again, remember, even at this stage, this is practice. So this is still not your real one. Practicing like this will also make you feel more confident about your marker handling skills. Whoops, I'm dropping pens all over the place. All right, I know this is very exciting. You can speed this up. So, marker technique. Don't worry about it for this stage because, again, this is still a thumbnail in a way. But if you get super streaky marker markings, think about doing multiple layers where you actually change the direction of your hatch. So first you're going vertically, then you're going horizontally, then maybe you're going diagonally, and eventually when you go in enough directions, you're going to lose that sense of streakiness. Okay, so now I'm going to keep going with this. If you miss your graphite lines, don't worry about it because you're going to end up erasing them. This is me being lazy now. I've given up on the ruler. And then that was something sort of interesting. The line actually broke, but I'm like, maybe I like that. So now I'm trying kind of a dotted line. Yeah, I sort of like that. Come on, ruler. Come over to this side. And then I feel like because this is happening over here, I kind of want something like that to happen over here. So again, this wasn't something that I was necessarily planning on. Could I end up hating it? Yes. Would that mean I would have to redo my thumbnail? Yes. So stuff like this, especially at this stage, really don't worry about it. I could be a little bit more careful than I'm being. And then let's do some of those little hatchy. And then maybe on this guy, I'll make him solid. So it's like its partner, but not completely identical. And here we go. Also circles, little tiny circles can be a really good stroke to use so that your streakiness is at a minimum. Okay, so things are starting to shape up. I have to start thinking about what I'm going to do with these other shapes. Where do things need to be darker? Where do things need to be lighter? Yeah, and there's no way to know unless I just get in there and start making some marks. This is also highly personal, right? What is aesthetically pleasing to you might not be aesthetically pleasing to me, and vice versa. But certainly you can use ideas like the elements and principles of design, concepts like balance, to at least create things, you know, that are certainly balanced, right? Or obviously really thoughtfully considered. And then I feel like we need another dark here, so. I'm feeling more confident about my skills with the ultra fine point than I am with my big fat point. All right. So, for the sake of argument, let's say that I'm happy with this. Am I happy with it? I don't know. I think I could definitely push it a little bit farther, but let's say. Otherwise, literally, this could go on for hours. No joke. So let's say I'm happy with this. Whoopsies. And then that mark happened. Which again, this is a thumbnail, so I should just let it go, but it's just not my personality. So I don't really want to make it solid, so I'm gonna do like a teeny tiny hatch. Okay. And then maybe this guy here. And I don't know, do we like this line that crosses in front of it? It is kind of interesting. It's the only time where an outline sort of comes on top of something. So let's give it a shot. If I hate it, I won't do it on the final version. Yeah, I don't know. All right. We're going to pretend I'm happy with that. So there are definite references to this, right? These could be railroad ties. These can be tracks. these can also be these forms here, so you've got lots of things to be inspired by. It actually could work in a couple of different directions and still reference that. So I'm going to say that that's going to work. So you are doing multiple thumbnails like this in graphite, and I'm recommending one practice thumbnail at scale of your favorite one for each picture. And remember, you have multiple pictures that you have to do. So this is going to take, this is like a full week's work, absolutely. And it might seem like it's just a lot of, I don't want to say busy work, but kind of. But really what you're doing is you're sort of training yourself to look at images and reduce them, to think about the elements and principles of design and figure out how you can capitalize on them. So for each single picture, you've done all your thumbnails, you've done your one practice fleshed out thumbnail, let's say, and then it's going to be time to do the real deal. So the real deal is going to look just like this, but it's going to be on your nicer paper. Like if let's say if you did your thumbnails, all of these just on printer paper, then you're going to want to use your mixed media paper and do your real one on that. So your pen's going to work better. You're going to like it a lot more. Plus that paper is archival, so you're going to have it forever. So at this point, it can be on the same page. It doesn't matter. It can be on a different page, but you're going to do the same process where you're going to draw a 3x5 inch rectangle. You'll probably do your sketch first in graphite pencil, and then you'll come in with your marker, and you'll do exactly the same thing that you did on this guy, except this time you know where you're going. So this one, lots of things happened. This happened, this happened, this happened, this happened that I didn't plan on. When I do my real one, I'm trying to copy this as best I can. Okay, so I'm not going to demo that whole thing because that's pretty, self-explanatory. But what I would say is after you block everything in with the marker, you want to let the marker totally dry, completely dry. Like it would be great, an hour I would even give it. That's probably a little overkill, but why not? And then I would come in with my eraser and erase all of my graphite. So this shows up quite a bit, but I don't know that the camera's picking it up, but I can see all sorts of graphite in here, and you just want to get rid of that so it's super, super clean. Okay, so multiple thumbnails, practice thumbnail, and then real piece for each one of your pictures. It's a lot, but it'll be great, and you'll be like a composition superstar by the time that is over. After that, what you're going to do is you're going to either photograph your final piece, or you can scan it if you have a scanner. It's up to you. And then what you'll do is you will create like a JPEG or a PDF with your image that you drew and your source image. So I'll do a separate video on how you'll compile those together. Because when we look at these, we want to look at them side by side, right? Okay, have fun with that.
Okay, I've done my finished polished drawing for each of my images, and now it's time for me to crop these, clean them up, and then tile them together with my source image. And that's how you're going to be displaying your work. So you'll have your drawing next to the source image. So the first thing I'll probably do is I'll crop this. So this is the cropping tool on the left. It's the little L brackets they look like. You can type in the prescribed values, so I've got 5x3 there. You don't have to do that, but sometimes it's helpful when you're trying to line everything up. So I'm gonna come like this, and then let's see, pull in this side, and I'm a little crooked, doesn't matter, I'm not sure. If I hover over here in the corner, you'll see the rounded curved arrows. You can kind of straighten things out a little bit, ultimately you're going to be the only person that knows that you're losing a little bit from one side or the other. You just want to make sure that you're not getting kind of your border or the line of your picture plane. So it looks like I need to come in a little bit on this side. Part of this thing that happens with things not lining up is because of the kind of skewing that happens with the camera lens on your phone. So don't agonize about it. And then once you feel like that's pretty much how you want it, you're going to double click or hit return, and that's what we look like here. Let's see. There we go. So you don't want the outline of your picture plane. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to check my levels. So if I come up to image and then adjustments and then levels, I am going to pull my black, turn that up, turn up my white so that it's as like crisp black and white as I can possibly get it. So this is your mid-tone. I mentioned this before. I'm probably going to keep it right about there, I suppose. All right, so let's say I'm happy with that. Then I hit OK, and I'm good to go. I'm going to save it. You can save it as, let's say, line, whatever makes sense to you, line and shape 1, because remember you're going to have multiples. So Photoshop documents, again, they're great because they're working documents. You can go back and change things, but you're never, ever turning in a Photoshop document. You're doing JPEGs. So there's some compression on it, but it's not a big deal. Make sure you know where you're saving it, and then you're going to go ahead and hit save. And then there we go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my the source photo. And I'm going to go ahead and so I've still got 5:3, right? I can move this around. Whoopsies, except not like that. Remember, to undo, it's Command Z. So I can move it around to get, I don't know, whatever view I felt like I wanted the viewer to see, but I'm fine with that as it is. And then I'm going to double click in there, and then I'm going to save this too, and I'll just call it source 1. Doesn't matter to me what you save it as long as it makes sense to you and you're saving it as a JPEG and someplace you can find it, and then hit save. All right, and there we have it. So now I want to put these two images together on one file. How am I going to do that? There's lots of different ways, but I'm going to do it by creating a new Photoshop document. So the first thing I have to decide is whether I'm going to stack these next to one another or on top of each other. And I think I'm going to do on top of each other. So that makes the most sense to me for whatever reason. So I'm going to come up to File and then Create New. And then I'm going to call it, I don't know, Line, Shape, Tiled. And so if I want them to go on top of each other, this is where you have to do a little figuring out before you start. If I want them to be on top of each other, this is 3 inches, the other one will be 3 inches, so it's going to be 6 inches tall, and then it'll still be 5 inches wide. So you could do it the other way, where it's 3 inches tall and then 10 inches wide. That's totally fine too. This is going to be black and white, and that's totally fine. 8-bit, 16-bit, doesn't really much matter. All right, so now I'm going to place these two. So I'm going to come over to one image, and I'm going to select all, Command A, and then copy it, Command C, and then I come over to my document and I hit Command V to paste it. So it looks huge, right? So now I'm going to hit Command, minus. I'm going to pull this out a little bit. So I'm going to click on the image, and I hit Command T for free transform. So I'm already lined up right on this corner. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to pull in from the right and or document. Sometimes it's hard to see. You can hit Command plus to sort of zoom in, but I think that looks pretty good. So then when I'm happy with that, I'm going to hit Enter. It looks like I missed a little bit on the right, but that's okay. Now, if I didn't hold down, let's say I wanted to undo this. If I didn't hold the Shift key down when I did the free transform, so I hit Command T, and let's just say I start going like this. So I can totally skew this image, so you don't want to do that. So that's why you hold down the Shift key, and that will keep everything according to its correct ratio. So let's do that again. Hit Enter or Return. And then I'm going to come and get my drawing. Command A for all, Command C for copy, come back over to my document, Command V for paste, Command T for free transform, and I'm going to start by dragging that into the corner. What? Why are you not cooperating? Oh, there we go. Hold down the Shift key and then pull this corner in until it's pretty much lined up. All right. Hit Return. Now that's the inspiration piece, the source image, and then my actual drawing. So now what I'm going to want to do, because this is still a Photoshop document, I'm going to hit Command S to save it. I'm going to save it as a JPEG. You are welcome to change, to save the title of the file, like with your name in it, whatever makes sense to you. And then hit Save, and boom. That is what you're going to submit. So you'll submit one of these compilations for each of your images, and you'll just upload them to Camino. Please give me a shout if you have any questions at all. I'm really excited to see the work that you make.